Do you know one of my favorite drinks is when I'm not drinking tea? It's actually fairly expensive because the area that I live in is considered an imported drink, and that means I gotta pay a lot for it. Cherry Coke. Cherry Coke here in Newfoundland costs $1.89, which is kind of crazy, huh? Let's talk about something else that's kind of crazy. For years now, in horror movies, that's 80s, 90s horror, whatever, sequels really tended to get a bad rap. A lot of times it was thought of as retreads or not living up to the original, and pretty much just being an out-and-out disappointment. But when people like to throw out the Exorcist 2s and stuff like that, they tend to forget the other ones that came about, ones that did different things with the genre, and really tried to make some headway, and not just be a retread of the old stuff. So we're going to look at a couple of those now, and we're going to put to rest the misconception that sequels suck. And in doing so, what I did was I took 4 films right here, and I'm going to talk about a couple more that actually not always surpassed, but did something different, or sometimes actually did surpass and do something better. But my voice is going, so it's not like I'm going to get tea. That's this one here. It's $1.89. Guess I shouldn't enjoy it. And we're going to start with a sequel that easily surpassed the original. I got this one on Blu-ray, but I just thought I'd crank up my old MGM copy of it, just because I like the cover, and we've seen the Blu-ray copy of it recently, so let's do something different. That is Annabelle 2: The Possession. By far and large, a film that is, in my humble opinion, about 10 times better than the original. This one has some great acting, directing. It's a much more hardcore film, and Amityville Horror can actually, and I own it on Blu-ray in a box set, can actually be pretty boring at times. And it wasn't for Margot Kidder being cute to look at, and some questionably overacting by James Brolin, I may not have enjoyed it so much, or wanted to go out and get the set. But I did, and one of the biggest reasons for that was this one right here. Amityville 2 is actually a prequel to the Amityville Horror, and you think that it might get watered down or lessened, but no, this is actually done by a Italian director. And anybody that knows me know that I love me some Italian stuff, and I love the fact that they get really hardcore and just go into some very difficult and sometimes questionable territory. And Amityville 2 has some pretty creepy ass stuff, and not just with the whole possession-y thing. You got a guy here that's psychotic, incestuous. It goes into a lot of different territories. This is not a movie for the kiddies, and honestly, it's way better than the original. Remember, these are opinion-based here, and I'm a very opinionated person. Hellbound Hellraiser 2. I am a huge fan of Hellraiser. How big of a fan am I of Hellraiser? Well, I've met the man behind the makeup right here, and gotta say, great guy. And one of the first people that I met and was very excited about meeting was Doug Bradley, because I've been a fan of Clive Barker's books and the Hellraiser franchise. Although we all know that if we want to talk about bad sequels, this franchise here and Children of the Corn tend to up the ante in what a bad sequel can be. That being said, as good as Hellraiser is, Hellbound Hellraiser 2 was just that much better. they seem to be more comfortable with their story in this one here. Maybe it's the fact that Clive Barker at the time was a first-time director, but there seems to be more of a grasp on the mythos in the second story. The villain, by far and large, and I don't mean Pinhead, but the real villain of this film, if you haven't watched it, it'll be a real treat to do so, is it's quite interesting. We get to see their kind of part of their domain, and you kind of start to realize that, hey, these aren't necessarily demons, and this isn't necessarily hell. Great film. Brings back Ashley Lawrence. Actually brings back Claire Higgins, a fantastic actress who played the stepmother in the original. And this is a good case of continuing the mythos in the right way. Now, can somebody get me a decent Blu-ray copy of this thing with some decent features? Come on, Screen Factory Arrow. Somebody's got to be able to do something. It's a classic. Next up is a movie that will never be considered better than its original source material, but will be considered different and cool enough to become a cult classic. And that's what it did. Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 baffled people when it first came out. How could a movie that had been so hardcore, intense, realistic, gritty have this gory, dark humor fest sequel? And why? Because, well, the original film, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, got about as gritty as it got with what they were doing, without Tobe Hooper retreading exactly the same stuff that he'd done before. There'd been enough space put in between us that something original and cool could be made. And he decided to take kind of a dark humor twist to this. There's already there's always some dark humor in the original Texas Chainsaw, but it was a pretty intense film. Not overly bloody film. This one would up the gore tremendously. And you get to see some really cool quality actors. Bill Moseley would end up in this one here. Someone that actually we're not a fan of that character. But I'm a fan of Chop Top, so much so that I actually have the action figure. And I also got the other edition of this, but I showed it recently, so this is the other edition, the original one that came out, the gruesome edition. And I wouldn't get rid of it because I'm a huge fan of this film. Cool fact is that if you're watching the third one, you'll notice that the girl from part 2, yeah, she's got a little cameo at the beginning of the third film. Watch for it. Very different film, very different way, very worthy sequel. Next up is another film that did exactly the same thing. When you get as dark as you can, and you've scared your audience as much as you possibly can for what you're doing with it, maybe it's time to take that that franchise in a different direction. And you don't have to wait 2 or 3 movies down the road to do so. Some people are innovative enough that they realize that let's do it right now. And Sam Raimi was one of those guys. Just like Tobe Hooper, he had made a very dark and disturbing film that had become a cult hit. And when you become a cult hit on that level, it's really, really hard to follow it up with something that is going to be that popular, or that's not going to live in the shadow. And if you want to get outside the shadow of something, you shine your light in a different direction. And that's what Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 and Evil Dead 2 did. And Evil Dead 2 has become even more popular than the original film that spawned from. This is probably, out of the 3 of them, the cult classic raison d'etre, of the whole series. And why? Because the film goes for the humor, it goes for the gore, and it goes for the batshit craziness that is the fun of Evil Dead. You could kind of see it in the original film, but they really realized it, and they had lightning in a bottle with Bruce Campbell and his work with Sam Raimi. Sam Raimi was an amazing technician, amazing when it came to working the the stunts, the cinematography, getting the gags out there. And there's a hell of a lot of gags in this one. You're not likely to forget the Ash against his own hand sequence anytime soon, because it kicks ass. And a couple more recommendations and notices for the argument that sequels actually don't suck. One would be if you've seen Cold Prey, which Frit Wild, because I saw it under that title first, so I'm still getting used to saying Cold Prey. Frit Wild 2, much better film. First one's great. Second one is just much greater. And in my opinion, the one movie that closes the books on whether sequels are inadequate, inferior, is one little film that took what the original did and just went in a would become iconic, and iconic beyond I think even the filmmaker's belief and any of ours back at the time, and that would be Dawn of the Dead, one of the all-time greatest sequels ever made. And if you ever wonder if the sequels are really that good, or maybe you'd like Day better, but that's still a sequel. And maybe you're a fan of Friday the 13th, but let's not forget, Jason didn't show up until the sequel. Not really, anyway. Not the actual character. And that's my thought on the sequels right now. Gonna enjoy the cherry coke. Got a kettle on boiling because I can't make it while I'm on here. But getting ready to hopefully go out tomorrow and to Ottawa. Maybe when next time I do some footage, I'll actually be in another province. Inshallah. So thanks for watching, guys. And for me right now, until I can do a sequel to this, it's time for tea.